Today we're going to continue to learn about fables, and I'm going to read to you Country Mouse, City Mouse. I'm excited to read this story to you, but before I read the story, I want to review the features. So let's get started. Fables are fiction stories. Fiction means fake, not real, made up. One of the things that is fictional about fables is that they frequently have animals as the main characters. The animals act like people. As you can see from this image, there is a tortoise and a hare. The animals are wearing clothing, they're standing on 2 feet, and they're having a conversation with each other. If you're familiar with this specific fable, you know that they're also having a running race with each other to see who's faster. We know that these are things that animals cannot actually do in real life. Another thing that's important about fables is that they all teach a lesson. As readers, we need to learn something from that story. Another word for lesson is moral. Moral means lesson. And at the end of the story, we should all learn something that we can take away with us in our lives. Even though we're not animals and we're not maybe having the exact same problem as them, there's something that we can learn as readers. The author's purpose is actually to entertain and teach a lesson. Now, before I read this story, I want to review something. In fairy tales, we know that all fairy tales have happy endings. They end with happily ever after, the good character wins, the bad character dies or disappears. Well, this isn't always the case in fables. In fables, sometimes bad things happen to the good characters, and this is something that's very specific to this kind of story. We know that in The Boy Who Cried Wolf, the wolf ate the boy's sheep. So it didn't have a happy ending, but there was something that we could learn about it. And in that story, we learned that it's important to never tell a lie. If you tell a lie, then people won't believe you. So let's see what we can learn from Country Mouse, City Mouse. Once upon a time, there were 2 mice who were cousins. One mouse lived in a small, simple house in the country. The other mouse lived in a large, stylish house in the city. One day, the city mouse went to visit his cousin in the country. The country mouse was very happy to see the city mouse. He invited his cousin to stay for dinner. The country mouse pulled 2 silver thimbles up to a spool of thread. The thimbles and spool of thread became 2 chairs and a table. He set the table with 2 acorn caps and a little birthday cake candle. He served a simple meal. They ate ripe peas and corn. As they were eating, the city mouse became less cheerful. Suddenly he said, "Dear cousin, however do you put up with such plain food?" Ugh. The country mouse was thoughtful for a moment. Then he replied, "My apologies, cousin, but this is what we eat most often, most of the time in the country." The city mouse promptly invited the country mouse to come with him to the city. "Just wait until you taste the wonderful foods we have in the city," he said. "I can assure you, you will not want to return to the country." So the city mouse and country mouse set off. They scampered through the fields and the neighborhoods and into the city. They arrived late that evening. The country mouse saw immediately that his cousin lived in a very grand house. "Shh," said the city mouse as they entered the house through a little hole in the wall. "We don't want anyone to hear us." The city mouse led the way as he dashed from room to room, making sure no one was there. Finally, feeling safe, he waved his arm and invited his country cousin into a large dining room. Once there, they ran up the leg of a huge dining table. The remains of somebody's magnificent feast still lay spread out on the table. They had left behind their silverware, their crystal glasses, their napkins, and a lot of their delicious food. "This is how we eat every day in the city," said the city mouse. The country mouse could hardly believe it. There was so much fancy food. There were bunches of fresh green grapes left behind. There were even slices of a delicious chocolate cake with luscious icing. There was more food than the country mouse had ever seen before. The two mice got busy nibbling away. Delicious, munched the country mouse. I have never eaten such fine food. Then both mice stopped in the middle of a bite. They heard loud growls and snarls and hisses nearby. "Quick, follow me!" yelled the city mouse. He scampered to the floor with his cousin right behind him. At that very moment, an angry-looking cat raced into the dining room. The two mice ran for their lives. They escaped just in time, dashing through a small hole in the wall. Whew! That was close. Well, we'll wait here until they leave, and then we can finish our meal. But the country mouse was so frightened he couldn't reply. He had never been in such danger before. He thought about his simple house in the country. He realized how much better he liked it there. He decided that it was time to go home. The country mouse did not even say goodbye to his cousin. He picked up his belongings and scampered out of the city house. He ran all the way home to the country where he felt safe and happy. So the moral of the story is there's no place like home. So as we know from this fable and what we have learned is that people like different things. You know, the country mouse, he liked his simple life. He didn't mind that he had to eat simple foods because he had peace and quiet and safety. Now that was the country mouse. The city mouse, he liked his fancy food and he liked his fancy things. But living in the city for him was a little bit more dangerous. They both had different tastes, different opinions, and they both have chosen the right place to live for them. So what your opinion is doesn't necessarily make it the opinion of someone else. So what this story teaches us is you're allowed to have your own opinion, and there's no place like home. We all have an opinion of somewhere that we like and what is home for us, and that is all that we need. We don't need to convince someone that our home is better than their home, because home is home, and it's that feeling that you can't describe. So I hope you enjoyed listening to this fable today, and I can't wait to share more soon.